Aaron stepped down from the transport platform with a slow, careful breath. The air of the glass court felt different from earth air. It smelled faintly of sea salt and warm stone. Light moved across the tall buildings like water. The place looked alive, not noisy, but alive in a quiet way. People moved through the open halls with small, sure steps. Their clothes were soft and folded like leaves. Aaron smoothed his coat and let his eyes rest on the court before him. He had come as an envoy, from Earth to learn and to teach small things. He carried a satchel with simple tools, a few medicines for common colds, and a book of stories for children. He had practiced polite words in the Cathari tongue all of the way on the ship. He wanted to be careful and kind. He wanted to listen, more than speak. The court rose around a central hall called the Hall of Threads. It was a place where many voices met in quiet order. Ribbons of light hung like tapestries from the ceiling. People moved around these ribbons, folding themselves into the court's gentle rhythm. The Hall of Threads led to inner rooms. At the heart of the court stood the throne of the Cathari ruler. The throne was small and shaped like a shell. It did not shout. It fit the ruler and the room as if it had always belonged there. When Aaron walked into the heart of the court, a hush fell for a moment. Not an angry hush, a curious hush. He had seen this before in other places. People watched a new guest with soft attention. He bowed in the way he had been taught. His bow was simple. It was meant to show respect. A guard stepped forward and guided him with a light touch to where guests waited. Queen Vesha sat on the shell throne with calm in her posture. She did not raise her voice, yet she made the room feel steady. Her skin had a pale shimmer like moonstone. She wore a robe woven with small beads that chimed when she moved. Many people came to her with questions and gifts, and she greeted them all with slow kindness. At her side stood Princess Nira. The child wore a shawl the color of green glass. Her motions were different from other Cathari. She leaned and turned in ways that made her look like a plant growing towards sun. Her hands often held small things, a sketchbook, a moth map, or a string of bright shells. The court treated Nira with a soft kind of celebration. People admired the way she saw small things. They paused to watch her smile. Some visitors bowed low, and some brought clever devices for her to touch. The court called her a marvel. They used words like special and gift when they spoke of her. Often, the court turned toward her like water toward a stone. Aaron watched all this and kept a small distance. He did not move close to the princess when others did. He offered the same bows and polite words he gave to everyone. He answered questions from ministers and helped a guard fix a broken strap on a food crate. He showed how Earth people used small knots to keep things steady in wind. A child in the court laughed when Aaron made a slow, clumsy knot into a simple toy. The child's laugh was a bright sound that eased the room. Princess Nira watched Aaron from across the hall. Her eyes were wide and curious. She wanted to know the stories he carried and the small things in his satchel. Often she came close to listen, then stopped. Aaron spoke with soft voices. He told a short story about a boy on Earth who learned to make a garden out of boxes. The story had no great end. It was simple and honest. People smiled. Nira's face rested on her hand. She kept her distance, but her interest showed. In the Hall of Threads, distance was itself a language. Some steps meant honor, some steps meant too much. The court watched Aaron and Nira with careful attention. A few servants leaned together and whispered. They wondered why the human did not stand beside Nira and laugh with her, as many others did. They thought maybe he disliked her. They thought maybe he was afraid. Others said he was shy. A group of elders watched closely. They had seen many kinds of visitors. They knew that different people had different ways to show respect. Aaron noticed the whispers as soon as they began. He felt the small eyes on him and the questions in the air. He felt a light tug in his chest. He understood how people could be hurt by curiosity. On Earth, he had seen times when children were shown off like rare birds. People would point, laugh, and take pictures. Those children learned to lower their heads. Aaron did not want to be part of that kind of hurt. He stepped back, not from fear, but from a quiet care he had learned long ago. He had learned to wait for a true invitation. He had learned that respect often looked like silence. In his mind, he made a choice. He would not force closeness on someone who was treated like a marvel. He would let the person choose how they met him. He believed that dignity began with choice. Queen Vaisha watched him and kept her face unreadable. She spoke to him with soft words. Her voice did not rise. She asked him about his journey and about the small things he had brought. Aaron answered plainly. He spoke of earth gardens, of toys, and of a few medicines that might help a common cold. He offered a small book of earth stories to the court. The book had simple pictures and gentle tales. He placed it on a low table and bowed. When Aaron sat, the book down, Princess Nira crossed the hall and stood near. She did not push or shout. She moved like someone curious and calm. She reached for the book and opened it with fingers that trembled in a strange, beautiful way. Aaron watched her from a little distance. He smiled and waited. The court noticed his distance more than his offering. Murmurs grew soft around the room. People who liked order felt a small worry. They worried that Aaron might be making a statement, without words. Some stepped closer to Nira to fill the space he left. Others looked at Aaron with puzzled eyes. Nira read the book as if it were a map to a new place. Her smile was small and honest. She made a sound that might have been a laugh or a song. A guard brought a cup of tea to her, and she accepted it politely. Aaron bowed deeply from where he stood. He did not move closer. He thought of all the ways a child can be shown off. He thought of a neighbor boy on Earth who had once lost faith in people's good eyes. The thought kept his steps measured. At the end of the first meeting, Aaron was led to a room where guests waited. The court moved with the slow order of the tide. People shared bread and quiet stories. Aaron sat and listened more than he spoke. He answered only when asked. He watched Princess Nira from across the hall. He felt an odd peace in the distance he kept. It felt right to him. In that first part of the visit, the court learned something about the human envoy. They learned he carried tools and stories. They also learned he held himself apart in small ways. That choice became the first mystery of the visit. It made people ask one small, bright question in the days that followed. Why did Aaron avoid the princess? The question hung in the court like a small, bright string. It would pull at many hearts and set the story in motion. ChatGPT said Aaron woke early the next morning. Light moved through the high windows like soft water. The glass court was quiet then. People came slowly to their tasks. The threads of light in the Hall of Threads glowed faintly. Aaron wrapped his coat tighter and checked his satchel. He wanted to be ready for small needs. He thought of simple help and small gifts. He thought of being useful without making noise. A baker came first. A crate of fruit had been stacked too high. The wind from the outer walk had tilted the top row. The baker worried the fruit might fall and bruise. Aaron saw the problem and stepped forward. He did not take the baker's place. He knelt and showed. A small knot that Earth sailors use to keep things steady. He tied a rope around the crate with care. The knot was plain and strong. The baker smiled and patted Aaron's shoulder. A few children nearby clapped. Aaron felt the small warmth of a simple good act. He did not look to see if Princess Neera watched. He only did the work. Word of the knot moved across the court. A guard who had marched through storms on many nights came to ask about a small rash on his arm. It itched when he bent his elbow. Aaron looked and said it was likely a dry skin reaction. He mixed a cool paste from a leaf and a little water. He explained how to keep the arm clean and how the paste would soothe the itch. The guard nodded and relaxed. He had expected complicated words. He found small care instead. He left with a lighter step. That afternoon, Aaron gathered a small group of children near the Hall of Threads. He sat on a low stone and opened his book of Earth stories. He told them about a child named Mira who built a garden in boxes. He used his hands to show how boxes could hold soil and water. The children leaned in close. One small child copied Aaron's hand shapes and smiled. The story was simple. It did not have grand battles or loud heroes. It had the slow joy of planting, seeds and waiting. The children loved it. Princess Neera stood at the doorway while Aaron spoke. Her eyes followed the small hands in the story. She came to the edge and listened with a soft face. When the crowd left, she walked closer. Aaron folded the book and looked up. He smiled at her from a short distance. He did not move forward. Neera's fingers toyed with a string of bright shells she often wore as a charm. She had woven them herself, and each shell held a small scratch like a fingerprint. She held the string out toward Aaron, quiet and careful. "From the coast," she said in the Cathari tongue, and then in the few Earth words she had learned. "For you." Aaron accepted, the shells with both hands. He bowed his head. The small gift fit easily in his palm. It smelled faintly of salt. He touched one shell with a careful finger. He did not step nearer to place it back on her. Instead, he held the gift for a moment, and then placed it gently in his satchel. He wanted to show respect for the gift, but not to make it into a show. His hands moved slowly. Neera watched, and a small change came to her face. She did not scowl. She did not step back. She waited to see what would happen next. Around them, servants noticed. Someone whispered to a clerk. A clerk whispered to an elder. The rumor passed through the hall like a soft tide. The human took the shells but did not step forward. Some voices asked why. Others made small guesses. A few said Aaron might be cold. The elders frowned. They liked order and clear signals. They liked when visitors fit the expected shapes. Aaron had not fit a shape. He had chosen a different form. Later, a teacher of the court asked Aaron to show a way to steady a music box that had stopped playing parts of its tune. The box had a small inside wheel that needed a light touch. Aaron picked it up and examined the tiny gears. He spoke softly. He used a strip of cloth to clean a small place where dust had stuck. The music box sighed back into sound. The teacher's eyes filled with quiet joy. She touched the music box to her chest, as if it held a beating memory. Aaron smiled and handed it back. He stepped back to a respectful space. Small kindnesses spread like soft light. People began to watch how Aaron moved in the court. He walked with an even step. He talked when asked. He offered his gifts and his help without making a scene. The court had many visitors who made grand acts of giving. Some arrived with flaring robes and loud speeches. Others brought great machines. Aaron's gifts were plain. They were tools, a book, and a few medicines. The court began to understand that he liked small, careful things. Princess Nera watched him from different corners of the court. She learned to notice the sound of his laugh when a child made a small mistake, and then fixed it with bright pride. She learned to hear how he thanked a guard with a single word and left space for the guard's reply. She saw how Aaron did not put her token on display. He kept it as something private. It felt different from the way others showed her gifts to the crowd. The difference teased at Nera's mind. One evening, Nera followed Aaron to the inner garden. He sat on a stone bench and took a small wooden tool from his satchel. He smoothed the soil in a little pot and planted a seed from his own pocket, a small seed he carried for luck. Nera stopped at the edge of the path. She did not speak. Aaron looked up and smiled. He patted the bench beside him in a simple gesture. "Sit," he said. Nera took 2 careful steps and sat. The bench made a soft sound. They sat in a kind of quiet that is not empty. Aaron showed how to press the soil with a thumb to give the seed a gentle home. Nera watched him do it. She touched the seed with a fingertip. It was small and cold, and the court's late light made it shine like a tiny stone. They spoke in low words. Aaron asked about the moth maps that Nera liked to draw. Nera asked about the gardens on Earth. Their talk was slow and full of small questions. No one else was near. The court's humming life went on in the distance. Aaron kept his hands near his own knees. He did not reach out more than necessary. Nera did not step away. She felt the comfort of being allowed to choose her place in the meeting. The next day, a servant placed a small bowl of tea near the bench. Nera took it and offered one to Aaron. He accepted. They drank in silence for a beat. The tea tasted of mild spice and rock sugar. It made the pause easier. Around them, the Hall of Threads continued its long, patient work. The court learned to live with this small mystery. People still whispered. Some said Aaron might be shy. Others said he moved with deep respect. Princess Nera began to think of those whispers not as stones to step over, but as small winds that could change with a tiny choice. She looked at Aaron and wondered what he had learned about kindness back on Earth. Aaron returned to his room that night and read the children's book one more time. He folded it carefully and set it beside the shells Nera had given him. He thought of the knot that kept the fruit safe. He thought of the music box that had found its song again. He thought of the seed in the pot. He felt small pride and steady patience. He had not moved too close. He had not moved away. He had waited for a clear invitation. He had chosen to show care in small, hands-on ways. In the glass court, little things grow into new paths. The knot, the paste, the book, and the seed began to tug at other hearts. People began to wonder if respect could look like this quiet way of being. The question moved soft and steady. Why did Aaron keep his distance? The answer was not yet clear to the court. It would take more small moments to see. For now, the court watched, and the two of them, the human and the princess, sat in the garden and let the night carry their quiet talk. ChatGPT said, Queen Vesha moved through the hall of threads like someone carrying a quiet storm inside a glass bowl. She did not hurry. Her steps were even and soft, and the court parted with the kind of automatic respect that came from many years of steady rule. Aaron was called to a side room. A steward led him past woven tapestries and low pools that held floating lamps. The room where the queen waited smelled faintly of jasmine and old wood. It was a place for careful speech. When Aaron entered, Vesha rose from a low seat and greeted him with a bow that matched his own. Her voice was gentle as a bell. You have given us small gifts and many small kind acts, she said in the Kethari tongue, and then in the few clear earth words she had learned, we are grateful. Yet I see a distance between you and my daughter. Tell me why. The question was plain. It was not sharp. It did not accuse. It asked for truth. Aaron stood and thought of the many faces he had seen since arriving. He thought of the threads of light and of the way the court watched. He felt the memory of children on his old street. The memory came like a picture that would not leave him still. He sat on a low cushion when the queen motioned. He folded his hands on his knees and looked at Vesha with steady eyes. He chose his words slowly. He wanted them to be honest and simple. On Earth, Aaron said, there was a boy who lived down the lane. He had a hand that bent in a way others' hands did not. Children pointed at him at first. They made a game of copying his walk. They laughed. He stopped coming to play. He stopped going to the window where he used to watch the street. One day, a neighbor girl, small and quiet, sat on his steps and tied a rope around a broken toy. She did not point. She did not laugh. She sat and mended. The boy watched her hands. He gave a small smile. Later, he came to play again. Queen Vesha listened without moving much. Her face showed no surprise. She had seen human stories written in small lines before. She nodded once and asked, You kept your distance because of that memory? Aaron nodded. Yes, I learned something from that boy. I learned that people can make a person feel smaller without meaning to. They can praise and point. They can make the person into an object of wonder. Sometimes they show too much attention like a bright light. It makes the person feel watched, not seen. Vesha's fingers played with a bead on her robe. She asked another quiet question. So you waited. You did not step forward. Aaron breathed in, slow and even. I waited because I wanted Nira to choose how our meetings would be. I did not want to be the kind of visitor who brings a ring of eyes and voices. I have seen a thing many people call kindness that is really a kind of show. It puts the person at the center of a circle, and the circle only looks. I wanted Nira's meeting to be different. I wanted it to be a meeting between people, not a scene for others. The queen looked at him with careful thought. She had many duties. She had seen many kinds of attention. She had watched the court give gifts to Nira as if she were a bright bird to be admired. Sometimes the attention made Nira flush with pleasure. Other times it made her pull inward like a leaf folding under heavy rain. Vesha had her own questions about what love and honor should mean. Some in the court feel uneasy, Vesha said. They think your distance is a slight. They wonder if a human can show respect that way. They have asked me to speak to you. Aaron held the queen's gaze. I understand the worry. On Earth, respect often looks like stepping forward and helping in clear ways. But there is a kind of help that does not ask. It takes. It makes a gesture of pity. The person on the receiving end can feel small. I did not want that for Nira. Vesha's eyes softened. She asked, Do you mean you feared pity? Aaron shook his head a little. Not only pity. I feared that others would use Nira's difference as a way to show their own goodness. They would bring gifts and stand in the light, and she would stand like a prize. It would make her into something the court could talk about, rather than someone who stood in the middle of a life. The queen breathed and let the words sink into the quiet room. Outside, the Hall of Threads sang its soft, tireless song. Vesha's face showed a trace of an emotion Aaron did not have a name for. It was not anger. It was not surprise. It was the kind of feeling a ruler carries when she learns how a small thing looks to someone else. She weighed his words as if they were seeds. You speak as if you protect her by staying away, Vesha said finally. Yet some think protection is being near. They think attention is care. Aaron's answer came soft. Both are care, in different ways. The important part is that the care be given in the form the person wants. Protection that takes away choice is not always protection. Sometimes it becomes control. That is not what I wish. I want choice to be hers first. The queen's hands rested on her knees. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she leaned forward just a little and asked, Have you spoken to Nira this way? Have you told her that you wait for her choice? Aaron's face showed a small regret. Not in words at first. I thought actions could speak, my small gifts, my work. But I see now that quiet can be read in many ways. I do not want Nira to feel shunned. I wanted her to feel respected. I think I failed to tell her this clearly. Enough! Vesha watched him and then made a small motion. She called softly, and a steward opened the door a crack. Princess Nira stood there, as if she had been listening at the seam of the room. Her green shawl caught the light. She looked between the queen and Aaron with a face that was neither brave nor broken, only curious. Aaron speaks of small things, Vesha said. But the court hears small things loudly. Nira, come in. Sit with us. Nira stepped inside like someone who entered a quiet room with a new map. She moved to a seat near the low table and held her hands in her lap. The queen's eyes softened further. She asked Nira in a voice only a mother might use, Do you feel watched, child? Do you like the lights? Nira's answer was like a clear, small bell. Sometimes I like the lights, she said. Sometimes they are heavy. I do not like to be held like a story. But I like the hands that sit and mend. I like the quiet ones. Vesha turned to Aaron and said, Tell Nira what you learned. Tell her why you kept your steps. Aaron looked at Nira and spoke plainly. He told the story of the boy on his old street. He spoke of the girl who mended in silence. He said he wanted Nira to choose the measure of their friendship. He said he would not make her into a prize for the court. Nira listened with a small, steady face. When Aaron finished, she looked at the queen and then back at him. You speak of choice, she said. You waited for me. That is rare. Many only come with bright words. They do not ask how I feel. Aaron felt a small relief like a door opening. He bowed his head a little in respect. Vesha's voice was soft when she spoke next. "You have taught me something today. Aaron, perhaps the court watches too quickly. Perhaps we place light where we mean to give warmth. For that, I thank you." The Queen's words were not a final answer. They were a seed. The court had many old ways. Change would come slowly. Still, in that quiet room, the shape of understanding shifted. Aaron had not given a speech, and he had not asked to be admired. He had told a simple truth. Nira's small hand reached out and rested on the edge of the table as if to hold the moment. In that touch, there was no show, no demand, only a wish to see what might grow next. The Queen watched them both, and for the first time since Aaron's arrival, she wore a face that had been changed by a simple, steady answer. The quiet question had been met, and the court felt the first small turn of a deep wheel. Aaron left the quiet room with a steady step, but his mind stayed with the small story he had told. The memory of the boy on his street did not feel like a tale he had read once and set aside. It lived in him like a small stone in a pocket, always there, always reminding him how gentle hands can change a life. He walked through the court slowly. The Hall of Threads smelled of boiled herbs and warm bread. Servants moved like careful tides. Some bowed when they saw him. Others only watched. Aaron kept his eyes soft. He did not want anyone's face to feel like a mirror for his answer. He wanted his memory to be a guide, not a show. That night, he sat by a small window and took out the children's book again. The pictures were simple. A child planting a seed, a neighbor mending a toy, hands passing bread. He remembered the girl who had knelt on the old stoop and mended the toy. He remembered the slow way she had worked with the rope, the quietness of her voice, how the other children had watched until the boy offered a small smile. The memory taught him a shape of care he wanted to honor, quiet, patient, and without fanfare. Aaron thought of the ways people show kindness. Some kinds are loud and proud. They make the giver feel warm like sun. Other kinds are small and steady. They make the receiver feel safe like shade. He had seen both on Earth. He had helped when people needed tools and a plan. He had also watched when people brought gifts to make themselves look kind. Those gifts often asked the receiver to stand in a bright place and be watched. Aaron had learned to avoid that second kind of kindness. He did not want Nira to be a bright thing in a circle of eyes. The next morning, Areen visited the place where the court taught young ones. He liked simple work. He liked the sound of brushes on paper and the smell of wet clay. A group of children was learning to fold paper boats. Their teacher moved like a calm river, showing one simple crease at a time. Aaron knelt and folded a boat with the children. He showed them how to tuck corners so the boat would float longer. The children's faces lit with a small, honest joy when the little boat floated. Aaron laughed softly. He did not stand in the center. He stayed near the edge, helping the hands that needed help. Princess Nira watched him from a distance at first. Then she moved slightly closer. She liked to see people work with their hands. The way Aaron folded the boat held no rush. She liked that. She stepped to the side and began to fold her own small boat from a scrap of paper. When she finished, she slipped it into the water. The little boat rocked and drifted. Nira leaned forward to follow it. Her fingers painted small waves on the surface with a gentle touch. A teacher called the children for a quiet game. They left, laughing. Nira stayed, for a while. She looked at Aaron and wished to speak. He smiled, and the smile was like a small door opening. But before Nira could move closer, a housekeeper crossed the room and said, in a tone that meant to be helpful, "See how the human keeps apart from our bright one? He will not come close." The words did not sound sharp, but they landed like a thin stone on still water. Nira heard them and felt a small prick. She had been learning how others spoke of her. Sometimes they spoke like she was a jewel to wear. Sometimes they spoke like she needed protection. The housekeeper's words fell into the same space as the other sounds. Nira pulled her hands to her knees and walked away as if she had been called. Aaron did not hear the housekeeper's sentence. He folded another boat and gave it to a child who missed the lesson. He smiled at the child. He did not notice Nira's small change of face. He did not see the way her shoulders drew in. He did not want to make a show. He had thought that quiet would be its own language. Now he could see that silence could also be read wrong. Across the court, people began to speak in low voices about the meeting with the Queen. Some praised Aaron for his care. Others said his distance was strange. An elder who had watched many things in her life leaned on a cane and told a friend, "He seems to keep a careful space. Perhaps he fears pity?" The friend nodded and added, "Or perhaps he keeps to himself. We are not like Earth. Our care is close and warm. We show our hearts by being with someone." Those words moved through the hall of threads like a soft current. Some men and women felt warm toward Aaron's quiet patience. Others felt a small unease. They wondered whether quiet could stand against the court's old ways. Vesha listened to the talk and let it pass like wind. She had a ruler's patience. She had also begun to think differently about light and warmth. Aaron had shown her that the two were not the same. Princess Nira spent the rest of that day with her moth maps. She sat where the sky over the court opened to stars and drew tiny lines of places she wanted to visit. She drew small notes next to each map and wrote the names of moths she liked. Her hand moved with a steady rhythm. Drawing calmed her. She watched the moths' paths on the paper, and in the quiet of the map she felt safe. Still, the housekeeper's small sentence had planted a thought. If Aaron kept away, did he not like her? If he did not like her, how many others kept distance with polite faces? She had seen the way guild members gave bright things and stood back as if the gifts were enough. She remembered times when people smiled at her like she was a story and then turned away. Her chest grew tight. Nira did not show this tightness to others. She folded the map closed and set it near the pots of seed. Aaron, in his room, placed the shells she had given him on the table beside the book. He touched them with the same care he gave to tools. To him, the shells were a private thing, like a note tucked away. He did not want them on display. He did not wish to make them a public token. That choice, meant to be gentle, could read as distance. That night, in the low lamplight, Vesha called for a small council. She wanted to watch how the court spoke of the meeting. The council sat in a circle and spoke in soft words. They discussed the meaning of respect and how to give it. Some argued that openness and warm touch were the best way to show love. Others suggested that choice and quiet were stronger. The conversation did not end with one clear agreement, but it opened a new space for thought. As the moon moved across the sky, Nira looked at the moth maps again. She did not write. She only touched a line. She thought of Aaron's hands and of the girl on the stoop. Both made a small shape in her mind. Hands that fix without taking, hands that stay close only when invited. The idea felt right and strange all at once. The next morning, a servant repeated a small version of the housekeeper's phrase to someone else. The words traveled without much meaning, but each time they moved, they picked up a new edge. In 2 or 3 steps, the story had changed from "he keeps apart" to "he avoids her." The meaning grew in the telling like wind lifting a loose cloth. No one meant harm. Yet meaning had a way of bending like light. Aaron read his book once more and set it down. He had acted with the quiet of his memory, trying to give Nira a place to choose from. He believed words should match actions. He had not yet said the whole truth plainly to many people. He had hoped small deeds would explain. Now he knew that small deeds did not always speak clearly. He would need to speak, perhaps, and to do, so in a way that did not fill the room with bright light. For now the court moved on in its soft order. Aaron and Nira carried their small thoughts like seeds in a pocket. The seeds would need time. The whispers of the court would need tending. A misread word drifted through the halls like a thin cloud. It would catch on a leaf or a face. What would grow from it, no one yet knew. The small memory in Aaron's chest would hold firm for now. He would wait, and he would try again to be careful in both action and in speech. ChatGPT said, Nira stopped visiting the places where Aaron often worked. She no longer sat by the Hall of Threads when children gathered. She did not bring her moth maps to the inner garden. The housekeeper's small sentence had lodged like a pebble in her shoe. It made each step feel a little strange. People who cared for her noticed and tried to fill the quiet with new visits and bright gifts. Their kindness was loud and full, but it did not touch what was inside her. The court buzzed in its soft way. Some people thought Aaron had hurt Nira by keeping distance. Others said Nira must be proud and that she would return in time. The elders debated quietly. Vesha watched with the calm of a ruler, but her face showed a thin worry. She had seen how small things could make a heart fold inward. She also remembered Aaron's story and his careful words about choice. The balance of care felt delicate. Aaron saw Nira's absence like a small shadow in his day. He had not meant to cause pain. He felt a sting of regret that grew steady in his chest. He thought of the boy on his street again, the one who had closed his window when others laughed. He had promised himself to act in ways that kept another person whole. Now he worried that his choice to wait had been read as coldness. He wanted to fix the misunderstanding, but he did not want to turn his attempt into another display. So he chose something small and quiet. He went to the craftsman's room and asked for a simple piece of wood. The old carpenter, a soft-eyed man named Ral, studied Aaron's hands and nodded without many words. Ral had a small bench where he carved toys for the children. He measured the wood and found a grain that moved like a tiny river. Aaron sat and worked with Ral by the lamp. He carved with careful motions. He made a small wooden bird with plain wings and a round belly. The bird had no bright paint. It had a smooth finish, and Aaron wiped each curve with his palms until the wood felt like warm skin. He did not carve a face that would stare. He left the bird's head simple. When he placed it on the bench, it looked honest and steady. He wrapped the bird in a scrap of cloth and tied it with a bit of twine. He did not write a note. He did not ask for help to deliver it. He wanted the gift to be for Nira alone, not for the court to see. Arin walked to the place where Nira often drew her moth maps. She liked the high window that looked over the southern walls. There she could spread paper and watch the sky. The room smelled of dried herbs and old paper. He placed the wrapped bird near a pot of pens and left without making a sound. He did not call out. He did not announce the gift. He only hoped the small thing would show his care without turning her into a story. Nira found the wooden bird the next afternoon. She had come to the window to draw a map and to sit with the sky. She noticed a scrap of cloth, neat and folded, near the pens. At first she thought it was a scrap someone had left. Then she saw the twine and the smooth shape beneath. Her fingers moved slowly. She untied the twine and opened the cloth. When she held the bird, she felt the careful work. The curves fit the shape of a child's palm. The wood smelled faintly of the quartz pine. There was no voice on it. There was only the soft weight of something meant to be kept rather than shown. Nira turned the bird over with her thumb. She saw the small marks made by the tools. Each mark looked like a small step made by a patient hand. Her chest warmed in a way that was not loud. She thought of all the people who had come before and offered bright things. Those gifts often came with clapping and loud praise. They sat, Nira in a ring, and made her a center of attention. Sometimes the attention made her tired in a way that scratchy cloth can make skin itch. This gift felt different. It was quiet and private. Someone had thought to make something for her, not for others. She sat for a long time in the window seat, holding the bird. The moth maps waited on the floor like patient friends. Nira thought of Arin's hands in the garden. She remembered how he had pressed soil with his thumb and had left the seeds safe. She remembered his voice when he spoke with the queen. He had said he waited for choice. Now she turned the bird in her hands and felt a new shape of his words. News of the small gift moved through the court without much fuss. A child who watched Nira from a distance saw the bird first and told a friend. The friend smiled and passed the information along. The story did not grow fast. It moved like a small breeze. It reached Vesha, who felt a quiet pleasure. The queen liked to see gentleness when it was meant and not shown for display. She made a soft note in her mind to watch how people learned from this. Nira took the bird to a shelf near her moth maps. She placed it beside the cup where she kept pins for the maps. The bird did not sit where others could pick it up quickly. It sat in a place of small privacy. For several days she looked at it when she opened the maps. Sometimes she would run a finger along the wing and whistle a little, as if testing the line of a new tune. The whistle was soft, and a sound that did not ask for more. Arin noticed the change in the court and in Nira's habit, though not at first. He continued his small works, repairing a torn sleeve, teaching children how to plant a seed in a scrap wood pot. He kept the shell string Nira had given him in his satchel, now sitting beside a small pouch of seeds. He felt the weight of his choice and the lightness that followed when he saw Nira look at him with a different face. He did not speak loudly about their new space. He was careful to let it grow. One evening, a guild member who had been critical of Arin's ways found the two of them in the inner garden. The guild member expected a scene. Instead, he saw Arin and Nira sitting side by side, each with a small pot. They were not at the center of a ring of eyes. The guild member paused, studied the quiet, and then left without a word. He had expected loudness and had found a gentle meeting instead. The sight stayed with him. Wordless moments stitched the court together softly. People began to test the new shape of care. Some still hesitated and clung to old ways. Some felt unsure how to be both warm and respectful. Others simply watched and learned. The Hall of Threads hummed as before, but now it hummed with a little more thought. Nira began to sit in the garden more often. She did not stand in the light to show the court. She sat at a corner bench where the vines made a small roof. There she planted the seed Aaron had given her in a tiny pot. She made a small map that named the place she would like to visit beyond the southern wall, a salt bog where moths gathered at dusk. She drew the moths in simple lines and kept the wooden bird beside the map. Aaron passed by the bench one afternoon. He did not stop immediately. He let his steps slow as if he were learning a new tune. He bowed his head in a small greeting. Nira looked up and met his eyes. For a moment there was no need for a speech. The bird on the table said the rest. In that quiet exchange, something shifted not because words demanded it, but because two people had chosen a gentle way to meet. The court watched from its soft places and learned slowly that kindness did not always need to be a bright thing shown to many. Sometimes kindness was a small bird made of wood and given in silence. Sometimes it was a seed planted and left to grow by the person who would care for it. The court's change would not be rushed. It would be a slow, steady bending toward something kinder. For now the wooden bird sat and watched like a small, patient friend. ChatGPT said, "The night sky above the glass court held its usual slow stars. They were small, steady lights that watched the world without hurry." Aaron walked into the inner garden with a careful step. The vines made soft shadows on the path. Lamps hung in the trees like small moons. He carried a small pot with the seed Nira had planted. He liked the quiet of the garden. It felt like a place where words could grow true. Nira was already there. She sat on the bench under the vine roof and held a moth map on her lap. The map was folded with neat lines. Her fingers traced a path she had drawn along the southern wall. She looked up when Aaron came near. For a moment they both smiled in the simple way that people do when they meet a friend. "Hello," Aaron said softly. "Hello," Nira answered. Her voice was like the small bell she used to test tunes. She set the map down and pushed a pot of soil closer to him. The seed had a small sprout now, green and thin. It showed a promise in the dark. Aaron kneeled to look at it. He touched the soil with a gentle finger. He did not speak at once. The silence was not empty. It held the space for something honest. Nira broke the silence. "Why did you wait?" she asked without hurry. "Why did you not come closer at first?" Aaron looked at her hands for a moment. He remembered the story he had told the queen. He remembered the boy on his street and the girl who mended the toy. He thought of how words had moved through the court like light and shadow. He wanted to say what was true in a way that would not make a loud show. "I learned that people can look with their eyes and not see," he said. "They can praise and make a bright ring. The person in the middle becomes small in that light. I have seen that happen. I did not want you to be shown like a thing. I wanted you to choose how we would be." Nira listened. Her face did not show surprise. She had seen many kinds of attention come and go. She had seen warm hands and bright voices. She had also seen hands that tried to hold her too tight in the name of care. She folded the map on her knee and looked at Aaron. "You thought their attention would make me small," she said. "Did you think they would hurt me?" Aaron shook his head. "Not always. Some mean well, but the meaning can be wrong. It makes the person feel like a story told for others. I thought waiting would let you choose a quieter path. I thought you might want to lead the meeting." Neera tapped the edge of the pot with a small finger. The sprout shivered. She thought about the times when she had been the center of a crowd. The light had been bright then, and it had left her tired. She thought of the wooden bird Aaron had made, and the small knot that kept the fruit safe. She thought of the way he had taught the children and fixed the music box. "You kept your distance," she said, "but you also gave small things. You helped without making a song." That felt different. Aaron felt relief like a small door opening. He did not want praise. He wanted to be understood. "I wanted you to be seen as a person first," he said. "Not as a marvel. Not as a test for others. I wanted to learn from you, if you wish to teach me." Neera smiled then, and the smile was a soft thing. "I will teach you," she said, "but you must teach me too. Tell me about earth gardens. Tell me about the moths that come to light in your place." So they began to talk. The conversation moved like a slow river. They spoke of small things. Aaron told Neera about a garden on Earth where children planted tomatoes in boxes. He spoke of the patience needed to water each seed. Neera told Aaron about a salt bog beyond the southern wall where moths gathered in a dark cloud. She drew a line on the moth map and pointed to the place where the moon made the moths shine like a river of soft sparks. They laughed at small stories. Aaron spoke of a time when a child had planted seeds in a tin can. The seeds had grown spindly and brave. Neera told a story of a moth that got lost in a ribbon and found its way back by following a quiet hum. Their voices fit together without hurry. They asked simple questions and answered with care. The garden felt like a safe room where two people could lay down small truths. As they spoke, the court's usual watch kept its soft hum. A guard passed by the garden gate and glanced in. He saw two people sharing maps and seeds. He walked on with a small, curious step. Servants in nearby halls noticed the bench where the two sat and thought of their own old ways. The sight of Aaron and Neera, quiet and honest, moved them like a gentle tide. At one point, Neera asked, "Are you afraid of our court? Do you worry they will not understand?" Aaron shook his head. "I am not afraid. I am careful. I think each place has its way to show care. I wanted to learn your way. I thought if I waited, I could learn how to be kind here, in a way you want." Neera reached out and pushed a small folded paper across the bench. On it, she had drawn a simple picture, two small hands holding a seed. "This is how I think of it now," she said. "Two hands, not one. We plant together." Aaron picked up the paper and looked at it closely. The picture was small but strong. He folded it and kept it in his palm. "I will keep it," he said. "I will plant with you." Their conversation lasted until the lamps in the garden burned low. The stars leaned closer like listeners. When they rose to go, they did not stand as teacher and pupil. They stood as People who had shared a small, honest talk. Their steps back through the court were easy. For once, there was no need to hide meaning in silence. News of their meeting spread quietly the next day. It did not rush through the court like a bright wind. It moved like a soft thread. Those who watched Aaron's quiet acts saw them in a new light. The elders who had worried began to test a new thought. Maybe careful distance could be a kind of respect. A few who had thought his ways strange felt their faces soften. Queen Vesha heard the tale from a steward who spoke in calm words. She smiled, with a small joy that stayed in her. She had wanted the truth. She had wanted to protect her daughter without making her into a show. Aaron and Nira had found a gentle path. The queen thought of the many small rules of the court and how one simple conversation could loosen a knot. She did not rush to speak about it. She would watch, and she would let the quiet grow. In the Hall of Threads, the threads did their slow work. People moved with soft steps. The court had not changed in a day, but something new had taken root like a small plant under the stone. Two people had spoken plainly and had taught others by their quiet meeting. The court listened, and the listen turned into a small hope. ChatGPT said the morning Aaron and Nira planned to walk to the southern wall, the glass court felt like it held its breath. Word had moved softly through the halls. The two would go together to the place where Nira drew her moth maps. People watched from balconies and doorway shadows. They did not shout. They only leaned forward as if a small seed might finally open. Aaron packed a small satchel. He put the wooden bird in first, then a cloth with a little water, and the children's book he had brought from Earth. He tied the satchel with a plain knot. It was the same even knot he used for the fruit crate the first day. He liked simple things. He liked tools that did what they promised. Nira waited at the garden gate with a light shawl and her moth map folded in her hand. The map had a new mark on it, a ribbon for the salt bog she wanted to visit. Her eyes shone in a way that made her look like someone who had found a new path on a map. She looked at Aaron and smiled. He bowed a little in the old human way, and she stepped forward. They walked side by side, not close, not far. The Hall of Threads hummed with its soft life. Guards, servants, and children paused in their tasks to watch. Some of the court's elders stood together and spoke in low tones. The elder who had once said Aaron might fear pity now watched with a face that had softened. He thought about the knot, the wooden bird, and how small things had changed small hearts. When they reached the southern wall, the air smelled of salt and stone. The wall ran like a pale spine along the court's edge. Below it, the land spread in a wide ribbon of flat salt that shimmered in the sun. Nira unfolded her moth map and pointed to a place where the map's lines bent like waves. "There," she said. "That is where the moths gather. I have watched them from the wall. They move like a cloud." Aaron knelt by a low ledge. He set the little pot with the sprout on the stone. He looked at the new green and then at Nira. "Will you show me the way?" he asked. Nira touched the moth map with a careful finger. "Yes," she said, "but we will walk slowly. The salt can be sharp underfoot. We will learn the path together." They stepped down from the wall and moved across the salt plain. The ground made a faint sound under their feet, like paper brushing paper. The air was dry and clean. The sun lay low, not hot. In the distance, the salt bent like a pale skin, and the sky opened wide, As they walked, people in the court watched from windows and rooftops. Some had thought they knew what respect should look like. Others were learning. They saw two people, walking together with no crowd, no loud ceremony. They saw a human listen to a princess. They saw a princess lead and a human follow with care. The sight made small changes in quiet hearts. At the salt bog edge, the Aaron and Nira walked on, each with a map and with a seed in a pot. They knew the path ahead would have more questions and perhaps more small stones to step around. Yet they also knew they had found a way to meet that did not make either of them less. They had learned to plant together. The garden kept there, secret like a friend, and the slow stars watched as the glass court began in small steps to learn a new shape of care. ChatGPT said, "The night sky above the glass court held its usual slow stars. They were small, steady lights that watched the world without hurry. Aaron walked into the inner garden with a careful step. The vines made soft shadows on the path. Lamps hung in the trees like small moons. He carried a small pot with the seed Nira had planted. He liked the quiet of the garden. It felt like a place where words could grow true. Nira was already there. She sat on the bench under the vine roof and held a moth map on her lap. The map was folded with neat lines. Her fingers traced a path she had drawn along the southern wall. She looked up when Aaron came near. For a moment they both smiled in the simple way that people do when they meet a friend. "Hello," Aaron said softly. "Hello," Nira answered. Her voice was like the small bell she used to test tunes. She set the map down and pushed a pot of soil closer to him. The seed had a small sprout now, green and thin. It showed a promise in the dark. Aaron kneeled to look at it. He touched the soil with a gentle finger. He did not speak at once. The silence was not empty. It held the space for something honest. Nira broke the silence. "Why did you wait?" she asked without hurry. "Why did you not come closer at first?" Aaron looked at her hands for a moment. He remembered the story he had told the queen. He remembered the boy on his street and the girl who mended the toy. He thought of how words had moved through the court like light and shadow. He wanted to say what was true in a way that would not make a loud show. "I learned that people can look with their eyes and not see," he said. "They can praise and make a bright ring. The person in the middle becomes small in that light. I have seen that happen. I did not want you to be shown like a thing. I wanted you to choose how we would be." Nira listened. Her face did not show surprise. She had seen many kinds of attention come and go. She had seen warm hands and bright voices. She had also seen hands that tried to hold her too tight in the name of care. She folded the map on her knee and looked at Aaron. "You thought their attention would make me small," she said. "Did you think they would hurt me?" Aaron shook his head. "Not always. Some mean well, but the meaning can be wrong. It makes the person feel like a story told for others. I thought waiting would let you choose a quieter path. I thought you might want to lead the meeting." Nira tapped the edge of the pot with a small finger. The sprout shivered. She thought about the times when she had been the center of a crowd. The light had been bright then, and it had left her tired. She thought of the wooden bird Aaron had made and the small knot that kept the fruit safe. She thought of the way he had taught the children and fixed the music box. "You kept your distance," she said. "But you also gave small things. You helped without making a song. That felt different. Aaron felt relief like a small door opening. He did not want praise. He wanted to be understood. "I wanted you to be seen as a person first," he said, "not as a marvel, not as a test for others. I wanted to learn from you, if you wished to teach me." Nira smiled then, and the smile was a soft thing. "I will teach you," she said, "but you must teach me too. Tell me about earth gardens. Tell me about the moths that come to light in your place." So they began to talk. The conversation moved like a slow river. They spoke of small things. Aaron told Nira about a garden on Earth where children planted tomatoes in boxes. He spoke of the patience needed to water each seed. Nira told Aaron about a salt bog beyond the southern wall where moths gathered in a dark cloud. She drew a line on the moth map and pointed to the place where the moon made the moths shine like a river of soft sparks. They laughed at small stories. Aaron spoke of a time when a child had planted seeds in a tin can. The seeds had grown spindly and brave. Nira told a story of a moth that got lost in a ribbon and found its way back by following a quiet hum. Their voices fit together without hurry. They asked simple questions and answered with care. The garden felt like a safe room where two people could lay down small truths. As they spoke, the court's usual watch kept its soft hum. A guard passed by the garden gate and glanced in. He saw two people sharing maps and seeds. He walked on with a small, curious step. Servants in nearby halls noticed the bench where the two sat and thought of their own old ways. The sight of Aaron and Nira, quiet and honest, moved them like a gentle tide. At one point, Nira asked, "Are you afraid of our court? Do you worry they will not understand?" Aaron shook his head. "I am not afraid. I am careful. I think each place has its way to show care. I wanted to learn your way. I thought if I waited, I could learn how to be kind here in a way you want." Nira reached out and pushed a small folded paper across the bench. On it, she had drawn a simple picture. Two small hands holding a seed. "This is how I think of it now," she said. "Two hands, not one. We plant together." Aaron picked up the paper and looked at it closely. The picture was small but strong. He folded it and kept it in his palm. "I will keep it," he said. "I will plant with you." Their conversation lasted until the lamps in the garden burned low. The stars leaned closer like listeners. When they rose to go, they did not stand as teacher and pupil. They stood as people who had shared a small, honest talk. Their steps back through the court were easy. For once, there was no need to hide meaning in silence. News of their meeting spread quietly the next day. It did not rush through the court like a bright wind. It moved like a soft thread. Those who watched Aaron's quiet acts saw them in a new light. The elders who had worried began to test a new thought. Maybe careful distance could be a kind of respect. A few who had thought his ways strange felt their faces soften. Queen Vesha heard the tale from a steward who spoke in calm words. She smiled with a small joy that stayed in her. She had wanted the truth. She had wanted to protect her daughter without making her into a show. Aaron and Nira had found a gentle path. The queen thought of the many small rules of the court and how one simple conversation could loosen a knot. She did not rush to speak about it. She would watch, and she would let the quiet grow. In the Hall of Threads, the threads did their slow work. People moved with soft steps. The court had not changed in a day, but something new had taken root, like a small plant under the stone. Two people had spoken plainly, and had taught others by their quiet meeting. The court listened, and the listen turned into a small hope. Arin and Nira walked on, each with a map and with a seed in a pot. They knew the path ahead would have more questions and perhaps more small stones to step around. Yet they also knew they had found a way to meet that did not make either of them less. They had learned to plant together. The garden kept there, secret like a friend, and the slow stars watched as the glass court began, in small steps, to learn a new shape of care.